I'm Dr. Scott Lyons, and you're watching or listening to The Gently Used Human. Have you ever felt the transformative power of music? Not just as a soundtrack to your life, but as a key to unlock deep personal healing and growth? Can a song, a melody, or a rhythm truly spark a revolution within us, challenging us to confront and transcend the boundaries of separateness and the trauma that stunts our own potential for change? Well, today I'm joined by the phenomenal Justin Michael Williams, a Grammy-nominated artist, best-selling author, and a visionary keynote speaker who stands at the crossroads of music, transformation, and activism. Together, we explore the intricate dance between individual change and collective evolution, shedding light on the role of community and the unifying power of music in the journey towards transformation. Justin challenges us to question the permanence of racism and introduces the concept of othering alongside the 8 pillars of possibility, offering a fresh perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that have fallen short. Join me as we tune into the music of transformation, talk about his new book, How We Ended Racism, and discover the endless possibilities that await when we dare to listen deeply and act boldly. Let's get this started. Justin Michael Williams, welcome to The Gently Used Human. It has been a dream of mine to have you on the show since its incarnation. So welcome, and thank you for making all my dreams come true.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for making my dreams come true. When we first signed on, I was thinking, how have we not done this?
Yeah.
How has this not happened? So I'm super grateful. I'm super grateful to be here, Scott. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And if you're just tuning in, my gently used human friends, I have no doubt that you, by the end of the show, you will have the biggest crush on Justin Michael Williams like I have had for years. From the first time I saw one of your music videos or we emailed, I was like, I love this human being so much. And I don't even know who he is. I just think he's so fucking cool. And you're like, a Grammy-nominated artist, you're a best-selling author, you have done your keynote speaker all over the world, you do retreats. I mean, damn, what don't you do?
I need you following me around everywhere I go, Scott. Thank you. And it's like, I'm blushing. That's great. No,
and a dancer. Were you professionally trained as a dancer?
No,
I've seen your music videos.
Not at all. Actually, I mean, the crazy funny story about this is I always as a kid wanted to be in dance. And in my immediate nuclear family, I have 2 sisters, and my family was very gendered about who gets to do what. And so my sisters, the funny story is my sisters were in dance and ballet and gymnastics, and I was forced to play sports. Fast forward as adults. Yeah. My sister got a Division I softball scholarship.
Holy shit.
And I am in music and dance. And so it's just really funny how that kind of turned out,
I love that. I love that. Because you had, what was the music video where you were dancing with most of your clothes off, or at least your shirt off, in paint and
in paint. That was my first single, Here With Me. I love dancing. I'm just not trained in any way. Yeah. I love it.
Because I remember watching and going, oh my gosh, he's a Graham trained modern dancer bringing it to his music. Wow. Okay. No. Natural talent.
My little sister choreographed that actually.
And
she put me through the ringer rehearsing, but it worked out. Lots of rehearsals.
Wow. I had no.
Yeah.
Say it again and where people can find it so they can immediately watch what we're talking about.
Oh my gosh, to watch me naked dancing in paint. Yes. Okay, so Here With Me, it's actually it's one of my favorite songs I released. It's a song about my grandmother that I wrote, and it's the paint kind of represents the tears of letting go of someone that you lost and wishing they were here. And so the song is called Here With Me. You can search for it anywhere you listen to music, or the video's on YouTube.
Yeah. It's a good one. I mean, there's so many good ones. I remember driving in my car in LA and having your album just playing nonstop. When I don't know about you, but when I don't jump around in music, I'll spend an entire month with one album.
Wow.
And just listen to it over and over again.
That's great. I haven't done that in a while.
You haven't done that in a while.
Well,
what
Beyonce,
are you listening to right now?
I've listened to Beyonce's whole album a bunch.
Which one?
Yeah, I mean, all of them, but the latest one, Renaissance, I listen to a lot. But no, I mean, honestly, I'm listening right now. There's a couple artists that I'm like really enjoying. Some of their music has been out for a little while, and so they're not new. But one of the things that I love is that like music is new to you as soon as you find it, if you've never heard it, right? So there's a couple artists who I really love. Cameron Forbes has just amazing music. And there's an artist that's really popular right now named Tyla, who a lot of people love. And it's like kind of South African beats, you know? And I've been listening to the two of them quite a bit. Yeah.
Wow. And of course, Beyonce.
Yeah. And Beyonce. Yeah. And the regulars. Yeah.
Did you see the spectacle?
Oh, the show?
The
of course. Oh, and the movie. Yeah.
And the movie.
It's a cultural moment. I was telling people like going to the Beyonce concert was like, you know, as cultural of a moment as like back in the day, like making sure you went to Woodstock or something. Yeah. You know, like if you missed it, it's just like there hasn't been a moment like that culturally around a concert with Taylor Swift and Beyonce as there has been since Michael Jackson and stuff. You know, that we haven't had that big of a moment in a long time, or like NSYNC, you know, or these kind of things. So
I happened to be in Germany when she was performing, so I went and saw her, and it was, I mean, the big, like, people were like, how was it? And I was like, it was a spectacle beyond spectacle.
It was just big. It was just big.
It was so, I mean, like, there was a tank on stage. I'm like, this is eccentric in its most pure, amazing form ever. It was incredible.
Agreed. I'm so grateful to be talking about Beyonce on a podcast right now.
We'll send it to her.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, we'll talk about Beyonce much more too, hopefully, and among lots of other things. And I, you know, in addition to you, like if someone were to meet you now, Justin, I have no doubt, and I hear it all the time, just they're in awe of you and your skills and your talents and the way you motivate people towards a sense of thriving, like, and your work as an author. I mean, really, you're impressive. And I think it's even more significant to go, here is the Justin Michael Williams in 2024. And to really also hear about your journey growing up. I mean, I know you grew up with like gunshots, like outside your bedroom window. And I just want, if you could share some of your journey with us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Of course. Thank you for asking. I just felt like a drop into my heart, you know? And so I mean, not that I wasn't in my heart, but it just really dropped all the way in. So I'm always grateful for that moment. Yeah, I mean, we all grew up with different circumstances. And this is one of the things that I talk about all the time, regardless of how much privilege you grew up with or not. Like we all have some conditioning or programming that we're working with, that we grew up with. And my particular flavor of it was I grew up in a really rough neighborhood, you know, with domestic violence and alcoholism, and also a lot of love in my family. So it's like when people were like, how did you grow up? I'm like, it's complicated because remember like when
Facebook status?
Remember when we used to announce our relationship status on Facebook, first of all, and have the audacity and the nerve to put it's complicated.
I missed that.
Me too. Any Gen Zers here are like, what are you talking about? That's horrific. But yeah, so it's complicated because there's so much love in my family, but also a lot of pain and a lot of trauma. And so like we literally, in the house that I grew up in, my family doesn't live there anymore. There were gunshot holes on our house, like actual holes on the house. And it was a very normal experience for us to duck, you know, get down and then get back up and just start playing video games again. Like it was just a normal way of living for me. And, you know, I always say that the younger me, I mean, maybe just because I didn't know anything different, was like much more resilient. Like if that happened to me one time today in 2024, I would be in therapy for a whole year. Like, you know, and so I'm giggling, but I share that to say, growing up in that environment, my adaptation to that, which some people here might relate to, was to become a chronic overachiever. And I think we all adapt differently to our circumstances, like people get in trouble or do whatever. And my adaptation was, if I just achieve enough, if I just succeed enough, being the only child, the oldest child, I kind of had that syndrome too. If I just succeed enough, then I will be happy. I will get out of here. I will make a better life for my family. And so I kind of went that pathway, very much so. I was class president, full ride scholarship to go to UCLA for academics. I went to UCLA. I get here. I have like $150,000 in scholarship money. So I had like more money than I've ever had in my life. I'm living in a safe neighborhood. I come out of the closet, and I remember, I will never forget the day that I was looking at myself in the mirror my freshman year of college. And I looked at myself and I said, I'm so confused. Like, how is it that I've done everything and I still feel exactly like I felt when I was living in that home with gunshot holes outside my house? Like, I'm supposed to be happy now, right? I'm supposed to be free now, right? And I think we all have these things. Like, we all have these external markers that we think are going to make us happy, free, or whatever it is. And it was lucky for me, honestly lucky, that I got the answer to that question early. Like, I was 18 and I was really confused, genuinely, and had nowhere to really go, turn and look. And a mentor of mine said to me, you're looking for your happiness in the only place that you haven't, that you can't, you're looking for your happiness everywhere except for the one place that you can't find it, or that you can find it. And I said, where? And this is going to sound really basic in 2024, but like, this is before the iPhone. So,
before you could Google, where do I find my happiness?
Yeah. I mean, you could Google, but like, you weren't going to find everything, and like, he literally goes, within. And my response to him, literally, Scott, I said, within what? Like, that was what I actually said in the room. I said, within what? And I had never heard this concept before, happiness within. That is had never been a concept that I had been introduced to. Yeah. I grew up very religious. It was like, there was this God that I was supposed to not be making too mad, and I was gay, so he was probably mad at me. And so I just needed to be a good person, and I needed to succeed and make money and whatever. But like, happiness within where? And so as an overachiever, it became my mission to find this happiness within. And so I started reading books and like learning to meditate, and I got certified to teach meditation when I was 21, and, started this metaphysical personal growth journey in college. And it's been like the huge part of my life ever since, and infuses itself into my music. And my writing is really about, when people ask me what I do, I am interested in helping things transform. I say I'm in the field of transformation. And so it's transforming people, transforming cultures, transforming workplaces, transforming whatever can be transformed, because that's what has really inspired me. So
what does that mean to transform something? Because it's, like you were saying before, like for some of us, hearing the thing like within would be such a new concept. Yeah. And I think even change is a concept for a lot of people, but it's different than transform.
Yes.
And if we can break that shit down.
Okay, let's geek out on this. Oh, this is already my favorite podcast I've done in a long time, because I'm getting really good questions, and we started talking about Beyonce. So, so transform and change are not the same thing, right? So we can change, and people are focused too much on change. Yeah. I say this even personally, politically, socially, like we can change as many things as we want. So the example that I love to give is, how many of us have been in a relationship with someone, whether it's romantic or not, got out of that relationship because it wasn't good for us, changed, got into a whole new relationship with a completely different person, and soon realized we were in the same damn relationship, but with a different human. You could move to a new country. You're giggling, right? Because we've all been there, right?
I literally had to write an article about that right before we started this.
Really?
Yeah. For Insider, some like autobiography.
Oh my God.
I'm doing exactly that. So yeah, keep going.
So, I think that the point of what I'm saying is transformation is like, well, I'll say it this way. it doesn't matter if you're in a different relationship or you've changed the relationship or you change the city or you change the job or you change the house or you change the whatever. Yeah. Because as John Kabat-Zinn, says, and many people, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And so it's like you could be on the most beautiful romantic vacation with your partner, but if you're in a pissy mood arguing, it doesn't matter if you're in the most beautiful location in the world, you're going to be arguing. You're going to be in a bad mood. The location doesn't change that. But it will change it temporarily and give you the illusion that something might have transformed until your habits and your patterns kick back in. And so this is what we see in the world. This is what we see in the way our laws change. This is what we see in the way that we change as individuals, and we shift and get in new relationships and jobs and things in our lives, and then soon realize, wait, I'm in the same spot, just everything looks different. And so my desire for people is about transformation. And when you ask me, like, what is the definition, and how do we really use this word? So I love the etymology. I kind of geek out on the word transformation. If I wasn't a communications...
I was just about to be like, can we get into the etymology?
Let's get into the etymology.
Ooh, okay, that gets me hot and bothered.
Let's do it. So if I wasn't, sorry, y'all, me and Scott we're getting hot and bothered on words here. So if I wasn't a marketing major in college, if I didn't get into that major, I would have been a linguistics major because I love words. I mean, it's how we create our reality, right? And so when you look at transform, it comes from obviously these two sections, and the origin of the word is this word transformare. I like saying it like that. But the trans part, which is a word that is in pop culture in a big way right now, means, so there's a lot of meanings to it, but the meaning that I want to pull out is to go beyond. To go beyond. So oftentimes people think trans just means across. That's actually the second use of the word, to go beyond. And so when you look at transgender, it's beyond gender. It's not just crossing genders. You're in a space that is actually inclusive of, but beyond what the typical binaries are. And so it's a really beautiful way to think about it, right? Yeah. And then formare, which is really interesting, is about what are we creating? What is being created? What is being birthed through you? And so when we look at these two words together, transformare, transform, it's really interesting because it's asking, what do you need to let go of? What do you need to move beyond to create and give birth to what is trying to rise through you at this time? And I think people forget the go beyond part. They forget that something has to die, something has to be let go of. And I know this sounds very cliche. It's like, well, you have to die to be reborn. Like something has to be let go of to be reborn. But what I'm being clear about is it's not about what you're letting go of externally only. It's about what you're actually releasing in yourself to be ready to be a vessel of creation for that which you are saying that you want to give birth to in your life. It has to come through you, not to you. And so that's the transformation's an inside job. It is an absolute inside job. Otherwise, you just keep recreating the same shit again and again and again.
I hear that. As so many of us, I know, and it's we're magnetized to the familiar, and some of it's like when we think about transformation in a therapeutic setting or in a coaching setting, any of that, one of the questions we have to ask with that other person is there enough resources to energize the transformation, because it requires fuel. It requires enough fuel to overcome the familiar pattern or wiring that's been there, and enough safety to let go of what we might have deemed like survival, but not necessarily the thing that induced more safety long term.
Yes. Yeah. And absolutely. And like, we need the fuel. And this is like, when people ask, well, what is that fuel?
Yeah.
And this is where, I mean, there's a lot of things, but I I geek out on science. So what everybody should know about me is I'm half a total woo-woo, crystals, prayers, mala beads. I love all the things. And the other 50% of me is a neuroscience, psychoeducation, linguistics, like geek. And so the fuel, there's a lot of things that we think are fuel that like pop psychology would have us believe are fuel, but that are not fuel. And one of the things that it's like, I will tell you, Scott, the number one personal growth myth that people think is fuel that I wish I could, like, if I had a magic wand, I would banish from the planet is this phrase. I freaking hate this phrase so much because it's so false.
Yeah.
You can only love someone as much as you love yourself.
Fuck that.
Oh!
I know. I love Rue. And it's just not, it's not even
true.
how we learn to love through our developmental evolution.
That. Everything is wrong with that. And all you have to do, this is what I do when I'm in a room. Yeah. I'll say, how many of you have kids? People raise their hand. I'm like, how many of you love your kids more than you love yourself? And everybody raises their hand. I'm like, see, there, false, right? It's just like, you didn't have to learn to, you don't only love your kids as much as you love yourself. Like you could hate yourself and love your kids. Like so it's just proof. But what happens for people, and I think this is what's important, is we hear things like this and we think that that's part of the fuel. So it's like, well, I just need to focus on me. I just need to put all my energy back in and isolate myself and pull in and not date anybody and not do this and not do that until I have healed myself. I've healed myself all by myself. I focused on myself for all these years and now I'm ready, to go out into the world.
As if healing happens in isolation.
Exactly.
Oof.
Exactly.
That's
the problem. And so the fuel, the reason why I share this is like what we know about the science, and you just said this, evolutionarily, socially, like we learn to love ourselves by allowing other people to love us in our faults.
Yes.
That's how we learn to love ourselves. It's not by sitting in your room reading books. You don't learn to love yourself as much as I love sitting in my room and reading books. That's how you learn about loving yourself.
Yeah.
It's not how you actually learn to love yourself. And so there's a difference, I say, between like conversations about transforming and conversations that transform.
Yeah.
And so part of the fuel is that we know for sure the number one piece of fuel is community. Is not feeling like you're doing it alone. And this is why, Scott, I think in this podcast, in the communities that you build, that I have the honor and privilege of being a part of in different ways, like these communities centered around healing are the number one rocket fuel that will actually help get you towards your goal. There is a very replicable study that always shocks me when I read it, that if you write down a goal for yourself and say it out loud in front of people who you trust, it is 40% more likely that you will accomplish it.
Wow.
40.
Wow.
I think the number is like 37, but
we'll round up.
40%,
We'll round up.
40%. I mean, really think about that, of what the fuel is for your transformation, having community around you versus just sitting with your vision board alone in your room.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, even from a medical perspective, we know that if a doctor engages with you and asks you how you're feeling in relation to your cold or your flu, that you will heal one day faster than if they didn't.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. The science on that is like our immune system responds so much to community and connection that we even see it in the healing of common ailments.
Wow. That's good.
That's
I did not know that, Scott. That's great. That's great.
I want to take a moment to give a loud shout out to the Embody Lab, which is one of the most incredible resources for body-based and somatic therapies. This show is all about healing, and the Embody Lab does exactly that. Whether you're on your own journey of transformation and discovery, or enhancing your skill sets in your career as like a coach or a therapist, a body worker, or really any career where you are supporting other gently used humans, the Embody Lab is your place for deep, inspiring, and impactful workshops, certificates, masterclasses, and an incredible community of like-minded folks. I love the Embody Lab, and so do so many other people that call it a platform to come home to over and over again. The Embody Lab is giving my listeners an exclusive offer, a one-time 10% off code to enhance your embodied well-being. All you have to do is go to theembodylab.com and use the code GentlyUse10 at checkout.
So I guess to wrap up like the transformation piece of the puzzle, like, you know, the work that I love doing with people, like just love doing with people, is helping them get the real tools, like the tangible, real, practical, proven tools that help you transform your life so that you can not wait for something external, like I was doing when I was younger, to bring me happiness, but actually be the generator of that for yourself and for others around you. And this is where we start to be in a reciprocal relationship with the universe, or, you know, with our communities and all of that.
Can we go back to Beyonce for a moment?
Oh my gosh, of course. I wasn't thinking it was actually coming back.
It's coming back. I'm as you're talking about transformation and community and group experience, I think about going to like events or like that concert with Beyonce, which was like being in a space with 60,000 people under what I would say was like moments of awe, and having to have that common experience of like something transforming on the stage, something transforming in you and me, and having that shared experience was like an amplifier.
Yeah.
Like the chills down your back or at my back, and being in relation to what was happening. And just like we were all dancing together, like that communal experience, it was just a unifying process that is so significant in feeling like less alone and more hopeful, and all the things that are, that as you're talking about, like the fuel for something greater to happen.
Yeah. No,
beyond ourselves. Yeah.
It is. It's beautiful. And I think this is why people have such powerful kind of collective, you know, Chip Conley and a few other people talk about this concept of collective effervescence, you know, and it's something that happens when a group of people are together. It's why we feel these kind of experiences. There's actually science behind why we feel these experiences in a group that we don't feel alone. It's why watching a sunset feels different when you're standing on a pier with a whole bunch of people watching the sunset, or with a small group, versus watching it by yourself, or why concerts feel different than watching it alone. You know, and it's also, you know, a big reason why I use music in my work. So people often try to ask me these, you know, this question about, it was so interesting when I was younger, and I'm definitely over this now, thankfully, of like trying to, or allowing people to try to put me in a box. Like, well, what are you? Are you an author? Are you a teacher? Are you a meditation teacher? Are you a musician? Like, what are you? And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm Justin.
The savant.
Right. No, but like, I'm none of those things, right?
Yeah,
like I'm those things only when I'm wearing that hat.
Yeah.
But I'm using all of these tools, all of these different tools for transformation is what I'm doing. I'm using all of the skills and the talents that I have to help people transform. And music, for me, what I always say is the sugar that makes the medicine go down. If it was all about knowledge and words and like witty TED Talks and books, we would all be healed. We got everything we need, right? You could just ask AI at this point. What do I need, you know, for whatever? And so why is it that we're not? And it's just because the healing and the transformation happens in our hearts. And we have to get the information from our minds into our hearts. And this is why I use music in all of my work, and why I sing and write music, is because music has always been, let's be really real here, for all of our cultures, across every culture, across the entire world, music is our original form of healing. And music in community has been our original form of one of our original forms of healing, and still is. And so bringing music into my work for social justice and social change and personal growth is one of the most important aspects, I think, of what I do, because it allows people to, have that spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down.
I love that reference. I love that reference so much.
Yeah.
I love music so much, especially in relation to trauma work.
Yes.
Because what we don't often think about in relation to trauma is that there is a lessening of our capacity to be in relationship to time, space, rhythm, and vibration, because we are more dampened inside. There's more like literal congestion, bracing. And there's lots of research about like even that we lose a relationship to space in response to trauma. And music has all of that. And it's like just being in relation to music again, especially when it's too scary to be in relation to our body.
Yeah.
But it's something that allows us to connect back into a sense of time, meaning that there is presence in this moment and future and past. Because in trauma, we just are stuck in the past with a fear of the future.
Exactly.
And so, and rhythm, like reinstalling rhythm, literally like our blood, our fluid body gets more condensed. We get more edema. So there's less actual movement of our fluids in trauma responses.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate all your work. And
it's amazing.
That you bring in music.
No, not my work is amazing. I think what you're saying is amazing. And what I mean.
And your work is amazing.
No, the timing of that just sounded weird. I love your work. It's amazing. No, like what your music and what music does is amazing. And
it's phenomenal.
There's so much really cool science around it. There's a really good book called Amplified by Frank Fitzpatrick. And his book is so phenomenal around the healing science of music and using music for healing, and not just what we, I think, in the personal growth industry think of as healing music, like not like
soft,
just sound
sweet.
bowls and ohms and gongs, like, which are fine. I'm not hating on those, but like, for me, like when I'm feeling sad, putting on a Mariah Carey ballad. There's nothing more healing to me, like, because she's expressing emotion in a way that allows me to feel in a way that I'm wanting to deepen. And this is actually something really interesting that I learned from Frank, actually, is that people often think if you're in a bad mood, that the way to use music to feel better is to listen to happy music. That's actually not true. It's wild when they've done the studies. If you actually turn on happy music, it creates a grating and a dissonance in your nervous system, and it can eventually pull you up. But it's a change. It's like a temporary force, and you sometimes feel like you have to force it. The way, if you are feeling sad, to feel happier, and this is replicated in studies again and again around the world, faster, is to listen to the saddest music you can.
So basically Adele.
Yes, so listen to Adele. Listen to Adele. Listen to that song that makes you want to cry.
Yeah.
And it will actually allow you to drop it, which we know from healing, to welcome the emotion instead of pushing it away, and you'll feel happier faster. And so, we use music to amplify what we're feeling and create a space that we want to create.
Amazing. Do you have a crying playlist?
Oh, I mean, no. Okay, so this is ridiculous, but I think I naturally, and Spotify called me out on this. So I don't know if anybody does like the Spotify end of the year, like wrapped thing where it kind of tells you who you are musically and what you listen to. So at the end of this year, it gave you like a music avatar, and it said like, this is the type of listener you are. And it called me a vampire. It said, you're a music vampire. And I was like, excuse me. And it said, you listen to sad, atmospheric, like music for longing more than most. And so I giggled because I was like, I'm outed. I listen. I love sad music, so I think most of my playlist is like sad music. It's crying music.
Oh, wow. I definitely have a playlist, I will say. And
To cry.
to cry, yeah.
Oh.
It's like, like the sad playlist. It's got a couple Ani DeFranco songs on it.
Oh.
And from like Reveling and Reckoning, the double album.
That's great. That's great.
So good. And then a bunch of Adele songs.
You know what song makes me cry?
What? Sing it.
Celine Dion, Because You Loved Me. Jesus Christ. That song. Oh, that song. I'm like hearing it in my head right now and I'm getting emotional. It's so emotional. Oh. Anyway.
I don't know, like when you're like frustrated or like angsty, good old like Alanis Morissette.
Yeah, Alanis Morissette will do the trick.
Yeah.
Alanis Morissette will go to the trick. I also love when I'm feeling like like that energy, like a Fighter by Christina Aguilera.
Yes. And then when do you listen to Beyonce?
I just listened to Beyonce like an hour ago. I was listening to Break My Soul when I was doing crunches. Like I was doing some ab work.
That feels resonant. Yeah.
I was like, you will break my soul. Oh, one more,
That's the motivational fuel right there. That's the fuel.
Yeah, I listen to upbeat music when I'm like cleaning my house or working out. And then otherwise you can catch me listening to like 90s R&B, like longing sadness, like Toni Braxton and Mariah Carey. That's my musical cosmology there. Yeah, it's a word from the Brothers Corin. If anybody doesn't know about the Brothers Corin, they're amazing musical healers. And they have this word called musical cosmology. That's like your musical kind of makeup,
Did you perform with them at like Esalen or just sing
I
with them
did.
at Esalen?
Yeah. I've sung with them a bunch.
Yeah, I thought that sounded familiar. Speaking of transformation, I mean, now that we've unpacked, deconstructed the shit out of it, I would say, not only when you talk about doing that in your work, you have done that in such a profound way. And I want to talk about this because you have done it in such a profound way in your new book. And I'm so excited. I gotta come to that book talk with you and Shelley in Florida.
It was so great to have you there.
It was so fun. And your book, just for those who don't know it yet, who haven't bought it, because you need to go buy it, is How We Ended Racism, Realizing a New Possibility in One Generation. And I have to say, it's such a fucking provocative title. Thank you for that. And before we even get into it, you asked this question that was so provocative in response with the title in that book talk. And you're like, raise your hand if you think we can end racism. And everyone raised their hand and I didn't. And I was like, wait, is this a trick question? I need more time with this question. Wait. And like everyone raised their hand. I'm looking at them and I'm going, but is there that much hope that's truly here? Or what is it that, because I was like, I'm so interested in where this sense of possibility is emerging from. And I imagine that's the same possibility that was fueled within you to even write this book, let alone the title of this book.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was the most skeptical of all. I am a gay Black man living in the United States, right? So I'll just start with the sense of possibility and hope and optimism around this wasn't immediately natural to me, at all. And what I discovered very quickly right after George Floyd was murdered.
Yeah.
We're reading all the books and doing all the things. And I just had a question. This whole thing started with a genuine question. I was reading a book, which I won't name, and I just had this realization. I said, why do all of these books, every single one that I'm reading, and every course that I'm taking on this work, why does it come from the assumption that racism will never, ever, ever end? Like, why? And so I just asked, I said, can it end? is that a thing? Like, can racism end?
Yeah.
And I just sat with it for a minute, and I took it to a fellowship program that I just, by the grace of God, happened to be a part of at the time with the Garrison Institute. And the Garrison Institute, their whole purpose of their fellowship program was to kind of like arm their fellows with resources, science, research, tools to ask and answer a big question about the world. And I hadn't picked my question for the fellowship yet. So I went very sheepishly. I almost didn't want to say it. I was on the Zoom call and I was like, I cannot believe I'm going to say this right now. And you have to remember like the context of the world in 2020, right? Yeah. And being anti everything and this and that. And I said, you guys, I think my question is, can we end racism? And everybody looked, paused. And the first response, somebody said, who? Because the answer was, that's what they said. Can we end racism? Like, who? Can who? Us? And I was like, well, yes, but no, like not just us, but like, but yes, us. Like, is it possible? Is this actually a possibility? And that's when they were like, you have to answer this question. And then my co-author of the book, Shelley Tigelski. So for people who don't know this, I co-wrote the entire book so I'm a Black, queer, millennial man from California. And I wrote the book with a white Gen X, straight Jewish mother from the East Coast, right?
She's Gen X? I didn't know that.
Shelley's Gen X, yeah. Shelley has like a 23-year-old son. Yeah.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah, she's doing good.
Damn. You know? Okay, go on.
Yeah, Shelley's doing good. And so we co-wrote it together to show what it really felt like to come together across divides. And when I asked the question in the fellowship, Shelley was like, I want to explore this with you. And so what I want to offer people listening is we went in with this question, can racism end? And one of the first things that kind of inspired us to really explore this is we were looking at all the language, again, around racism, anti-racist, and needing to be a lifelong anti-racist. And then words like healing racism, fixing racism, or looking at what's happening in the world, like how do we make this better? And I remember just thinking about it critically for a moment and going, okay, first of all, if I have to be a lifelong anti-racist, isn't that already making me a part of the problem? Because for me to identify as a lifelong anti-racist, wouldn't racism have to always exist for me to be anti it? Like, it's just, I can't be anti-racist if there's no racism. Mm-hmm. So don't I have to keep creating the problem to keep fighting it? In some way, even indirectly. And so in order to be a lifelong anti-racist, there must always be racism, one. Two, in being anti-racist, the language there doesn't tell me anything about what I'm for. It just tells me what I'm fighting against. And if we're just focusing on what we're fighting against, but not what we're moving toward, then what are we moving toward? And once we've dismantled all of it, what replaces it? Like if we dismantled everything we want to dismantle, how much energy and time, like real energy and time, have we put into not just envisioning, but planning what gets created in its stead? And then finally, the question that really inspired us was this language around healing racism, fixing, making it better. And I said, what the fuck is healed racism? What is better racism? What is fixed racism? Even if we got that, I don't want that either. Yeah. So why am I going to work? Why am I going to fight for that?
Yeah.
And so what we did, which Shelley and I both experiencing plenty of racism in our lives, and with the Garrison Institute supporting us, we said, okay, let's just start to ask the question and explore it with science from everywhere. Can this end? And at every corner we turned, we discovered that not only was it possible, but that humanity actually already possesses all of the knowledge, all of the tools, everything that we would possibly need. Nothing new needs to be invented or created. Racism can end. And the only thing missing is that humans don't believe we can. Because the future is nothing but a possibility in the present. That's it. The future is a possibility in the present. And if we don't believe that there is a possibility of it ending, then there's no future where that possibility exists.
Mm.
And so our big work with this book, and just to be clear with folks, it's not a like, here's 10 steps to end racism. That would be bullshit. That's not the book. It presents what we discovered in our research, doing focus groups and studies with people all over the world, of what we call the 8 pillars of possibility. And these pillars are what we discovered. And they're not the only pillars, but they're the 8 that we discovered, that if these pillars exist, if people learn to embody the tools in these 8 pillars, then the possibility of ending racism is here for us. And so we just wanted to present what we learned in a very practical way. And it's getting great feedback, but it's also an interesting time because people are kind of over reading about it in a way, and over talking about it because we got so overindulged with it for those couple of years. So
you think we hit like the folks hit a capacity, or what do you think happened that like, because it's kind of wild to think things like this can ebb and flow in popularity, or like being able to absorb it or take it in.
Yeah, it's, I don't want to say that it's ebbed and flow. It does, but that's language that I would be careful of to use. I'll tell you what, from the research that we've done, what we believe has happened. The work that people invested massive amounts of time and energy and resources and money into doing, into being anti-racist, expectedly fell short. And it's shown 92% of companies say that the work and resources they put into their DEI did not meet their expectations. So, and this is not a surprise to Shelley and I after the research we've done. It's like, we didn't, I'm not saying, oh, we're better. We knew better then, because we didn't. We only found this out through our research, is that the work was inherently flawed. Because we hadn't done the prerequisite work to actually let that work. Like having conversations and doing DEI work is about connection. It's really, at the end of the day, the work around diversity, equity, inclusion is not about diversity, equity, inclusion. It's about connection.
Yeah.
It's scientifically, like anthropologically, easier for a group of homogenous people to connect than it is for a diverse group of people to connect. And so if we're not teaching people connection, skills to connect, not just with each other, but with themselves and their real emotions and the real things, then we try to have these difficult conversations and they don't work, or they change things temporarily, as what we're seeing, right? But we haven't transformed as people. And so what Shelley and I like to say is that the work in our book, and this is why a lot of companies bring us in and these different things, is because our book, thankfully, based on the science, is like an activation that like helps all of the work that they've done previously on DE&I that hasn't worked suddenly start to activate and work. Because now you've done the groundwork, you've done the preparation work, and it's not too late to go back and do it. And so this is like, my hope with this book and this work is that it helps to jumpstart a dead battery that has been running, revving without moving and has run out of fuel.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's really powerful, Justin. And to think, part of what happens when we join a fight that feels like it can never end, if that's the mentality we're under, helplessness and hopelessness creeps in. It can't not.
Yeah.
And defeat.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you've been working at something for a couple of years and really putting effort into it, like I can say from somebody who works in this space, I genuinely saw people putting their whole heart and soul into DEI work. Like people really were committed.
Yeah.
And when you've done it and you're only seeing very minimal results, of course you're going to back off. Of course.
Yeah.
Think about if you were going to the gym every single day for 2 years and never got even you got the slightest, tiniest little change in your body, but nothing else happened. You would say this workout doesn't work. And so you would go, I need to do something else with my time. And so I don't blame folks. But what my question became in Shelley's is, okay, how do we insert something that actually helps move this forward in a way that's proven? And I will say something, this is not controversial. I've had to get out of my head that this is controversial. But like, it's the age old, like, phrase, and I'm going to say it wrong, of like using the master's tools, or what do they say? Scott, do you know this phrase of like, I'm messing it up.
That we can't solve the problem using the same tools that put us there.
That put us in it.
Yeah.
And this is what we saw, unfortunately, because of the healing work that even the BIPOC community needed to do. Like, because of the community, the work that we needed to do internally to heal, to show up, to be ready to receive a world where white people had done their work, or to receive a world without racism. A lot of us weren't doing that work. We were saying, you white people, you people there, you whatever, you have a lot of work to do now. Put down the microphone, pass it to me, and let me tell you what to do. And this is, I know this sounds crazy, but everyone knows this is what was happening, right? And it just isn't going to work. It's the same tools that got us into this problem. It's one-sided. And I understand that we had to swing the pendulum, and it was time for new people to have their voices. But this example, this idea of like, because I'm a white person, need to not speak because I need to elevate Black voices, is the same fucking problem reversed.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. We have to create a space where we're all included in the conversation. Not that one voice has to be suppressed for another voice to be elevated. It's just the same thing, you know? So
is this part of what was, it is part of what you talk about in like chapter 16, which is calling people forward instead of out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so calling forward instead of calling out is a kind of term that we coined, because people would say, oh, well, instead of calling out, you need to call people in, right? Like, let's call people in. And for people who don't know, calling out obviously is like something, or maybe not obviously, is when someone does something you think is wrong, you name it publicly. Calling in is naming it privately. But neither of these things work if you're not calling someone forward. They don't work if you're using shame, blame, and guilt.
They don't
work. It shuts down the brain.
Shuts it down.
Gone. And so how do we call people forward? And we actually guide people in the book with like a script, like a Mad Libs style script on calling people forward. And we do that a lot throughout the whole book to kind of help people understand how to really use these tools in their life, not just learn about them, but how to really use them to make a change.
It really is such a different process. I remember being in a support position for something that was sharing was, calling someone forward and letting them know that something they had said publicly was not okay, to say the least. And there was a huge movement to cancel that person. And there was a lot of shame based. And there was a whole nother like group that I really got to witness what it was to be like, we're not going to use those same devices. We're not. We're going to bring them forward with love and say, in community and love, transformation is possible.
Yeah.
And it was so incredible to see the difference.
Yeah. No, it makes such a huge difference. And like, this is the shadow work that we have to do. And we have a whole part in the book around shadow work, individual and collective, that we have to do. And I say we, meaning all of us, all races, all backgrounds, all persuasions, of what do we have to do to make sure that our activism and our movements for change and our healing is not just being colored by our unresolved wounding. And so it's like, if we don't do that shadow work, then we do end up saying, well, and we're not saying this consciously most of the time. Some people are, but most of us are not. We think we're doing something good and we're like, oh, well, but subconsciously we're saying, well, but because I was wronged, now it's time for me to have the power. And then what we do is we recreate, like I talked about earlier, we get the power and we just recreate the same system oppressing someone else. And so this is why what we look at in the book is, what are the 8 tools and 8 pillars that we as humans, as individuals, need to know to be able to end racism upon arrival? That when racism hits you, you're like a healthy immune cell coming in contact with a virus or a bacteria. It ends because it comes in contact with you. And if enough of us learn these tools of immunity, it's not that, I want to be clear, ending racism does not look like we all woke up one morning and had no bias. That's not what we're suggesting.
Yeah.
What it looks like is we are responsible for our bias. What it looks like is bias arrives, or racism arrives in our presence, and we have the tools and skills that it's not a problem. It's not an issue. Racism comes up and we go, oh, I know how to deal with that. Done. Next. Do you get what I'm saying? That's a very different reaction. So.
It's very different. This show is also brought to you by the absolutely stunning and powerful tools of transformation that are created by Omala. Oof, even the name Omala transports you to a place of flow and vitality. These are some of my favorite products ever. They have an amazing color-changing yoga mat that responds to your temperature and presence and reflects back your posture in real time. There's this incredible smelling skin balm candle that heats up to activate all the essential oils and vitamins that your skin has been craving. I mean, look, if I could live in a giant bath of this candle, I would 100% do it. They also have these journals that lead you into profound insight, and then you get to plant those journals to create a stunning flower garden. What? I mean, if that's not deep and inventive, I don't know what is. If you're someone who desires to live a luxurious flow of life and who believes in transformative wellness, then you have to check out Omala. Omala is giving my listeners an exclusive discount to treat yourself to something that is as special as you, boo. All you have to do is go to omala.com, that's OMALA.com, and use the code DrScott10 at checkout. And a portion of every purchase goes to an incredible charity. You got this. Can we take a step back for a moment before we take a step forward and ask the question to you, Justin, like, what is racism?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's really important. We define it in a very specific way in the book because there are many different ways to define it. And the reason why there's different ways to define it is because the whole concept itself is bullshit. Right?
There you have it.
So let's start there, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no accepted definition because the concept of race itself is not biological, has no backing other than a social construct that was created for power and control. So trying to define it in a way that satisfies everyone isn't going to work, because that's the whole point of the concept itself, is to separate people. So I'll just be clear on that. But the way that we define it in the book is we actually lift out of just the concept of racism, and we talk about a concept called othering, right? And so othering is part of what science shows is the human condition. Humans, for now, with the way these brains work, these feeble little human brains that we have to navigate reality that we only use a small percentage of, we create what's called in-groups and out-groups. This is what we do. This is what we have always done. And for the foreseeable future, this is what we will continue to do. That is called othering. We create somebody and say, you're in my in-group, so you're in, but you are in the out-group, so you're other. Throughout human history, we have done this in a lot of different ways, mostly social class and religion. It is actually, this will shock people, a relatively new thing in human history to do this thing called othering based upon this concept called race. It's only a few hundred years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a few hundred years old. And we did not do this throughout human history. We did not always judged people based upon this concept called race. And so it's hard for us to imagine now, because of our short lifespans in context of human history, a world without it. But most of human history didn't have this, right? And so being without it is a real possibility. But what I want to share is the way we're defining racism is othering on the basis of what society is calling race. And so in different countries, that means different things, right? So Israel, Palestine is a racial thing in a certain way. Obviously, there's religion and stuff involved, but there's a racial element to this. And so we can use the concepts in this book for that as well. In the United States, it looks like, for a while, it looked like, okay, is it black or is it white? But it's obviously not just black and white. It's all different kinds of, we kind of have a skin color based racism in the United States. Different countries have different ways of looking at it. So we say the way race is defined in your culture, the othering based upon that is how we're defining racism. And the book can apply inside of all of those contexts, because what we're really doing in the book is teaching people how to overcome othering on the basis of race versus just racism itself.
Othering is sometimes it's, I think, for those who are listening, if even the discussion of and using the word racism already has a visceral response that shuts you down, first of all, that's some deep awareness that's important about how do we grow some sensation tolerance to be in conversation with that word. But also, othering can sometimes be a more accessible word before we shut down to it. And so I appreciate the variety to which you're offering in terms of language, because we know language has power significantly over our body.
Yeah. And I like to, so like, just to give people a concept, like a direct kind of concept of shadow work, like we've been talking about, related to this concept of othering from the book. So this is a concept that I love inside of the book. We have a chapter called Who is Supreme? And the reason why I love this chapter is it deals with othering straight on and helps us realize that we all do it. And that in order for racism to end, what we have to work on is the way that we are perpetuating othering in our lives in all ways, not just around race. So supremacy, when we hear that word, what do people think of right away? People think of white supremacy in some form, right? Or, and especially in the United States right now, like when you hear supremacy, people go, oh, white supremacy, the KKK, Nazis, this, that, right? So this is where we go. But I'm inviting people, just like with racism, we had to back up to othering. I want to go from like white supremacy to supremacy as a concept in general, which is what is considered supreme. Supreme meaning situated above. And so look in your own life. This is my invitation to folks. Look in your own life and look at how you might consider something to be situated above something else in your own life and social context. We have this in a lot of ways. We have, I'll be silly about it just to go back to this, like Taylor Swift's supremacy to Beyonce's supremacy, right? Like people who think like Taylor Swift is the best, but people who is above this. I'm being silly, about that. But we have, religious supremacy. We have liberal supremacy. We have people who are in the healing and transformational space supremacy. We have I go to therapy and you don't supremacy. We have all kinds of supremacy where we go, no, this group is situated above this group. And so I am situated above this. I know some of my friends have like gay supremacy. Gay people, no, we actually live better lives. We're younger, we're freer. We don't have this, we don't have that, right? So there's like this supremacy that we have inside of our cultures and in the different groups that we identify with. And we have to look at this in ourselves, because if you're situated above, you have to look at who you're making below.
Is supremacy a vehicle for othering then?
Exactly.
Okay.
Supremacy is the vehicle for othering. And so when we're looking at ending racism, and we have to first look at our relationship to othering. And the first entry point into your relationship to othering is to look at the supremacy in your own life. Look at where you are already making yourself supreme. And this is again, using the same tools that whatever got us into the problem, into the whatever that phrase that we can't quite land. It's just, if we're looking to end it, we have to look at how we can transform these elements that are already in our lives so that we can apply them to this concept of ending racism as well.
Yeah. What are, sometimes, I don't know, I've been in a lot of conversations. I've been in conversations with you around racism, and it's, I come back to, sometimes it's such an overwhelming subject. So first of all, thank you for your book that makes it accessible, that deconstructs it. And third, sometimes as humans, we need to hear the consequences. The consequences to ourselves, even. And I go back to this question of what are the consequences of othering others on other people, as much as what are the consequences for our own psychology, biology?
Yeah, there are many. There are so many. Yeah. I'm just where do I start? We're living inside of the consequences right now in every way. The delusion, as Einstein called it, that there is any such thing as a separate self disconnected from others is one of the biggest problems in the world. If we could wake up from this delusion to not go, oh, there's nature, but I am nature. Not, oh, there's this person in that country, but I am also that country. This is, all of this exists. We're all connected to one another. It just sounds so cliche, but it's just so true. It is true scientifically, anthropologically, quantum. It's in every field, that we are absolutely inextricably connected to one another, and our liberation is bound together. Now, we may temporarily be able to pretend because of our privilege that, and I have plenty of privilege, and that we may not have to feel or notice the repercussions of our separation, of our perpetuating our own separation. And that's what comes with class and privileges. You don't have to feel it, but that's a part of what keeps us separate. And the shadow work and the work that we have to do of transformation is to be willing to look and go, how I'm being impacting this world in a way that is creating more harm than it is good?
Thank you for breaking that down.
Does that answer the question that you asked?
I think it's a solid foundation of it, beyond getting in. Like you said, there's so many things we could talk about, the actual physiological reaction in someone's immune system to othering is significant.
Very.
Just as much as we cannot enact violence without othering.
Exactly.
Violence is symptomology of the own othering we have either been we constructed, or that we've been taught, or what's been modeled for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Scott, one of the things, so yes to all of those things. One of the things that I really want to make sure that I don't forget to come back to that you said that is really important for this conversation is you said racism is such a big concept. People feel like it's such a big concept.
Yeah.
That is a part of the problem, that belief. Ending racism, I want to be very clear about this. This is from the science of what causes transformation in our brains as human beings. Ending racism is no bigger of a thing to end than any other transformation that you've experienced in your life. Because, and so let me be clear here before people go, well, wait a second, the systems and this, is it systemic? Yes. Are there systems that need to change? Of course. Are there laws that need to change? Absolutely. But who changes and upholds or shifts those laws? Individual people. Laws aren't just there. They don't some external thing that just happen. Individual people create, uphold, edit, adjust. So the order for the systems to change, it's not just about dismantling this idea of a system. It's about transforming the people who continue to perpetuate and create these systems. And the new people who are coming in, are they going to keep upholding the same systems? Or are they going to shift them? And so the reason I bring this up is racism can only end at a systemic level as it ends on an individual level. Because a country or a group or a nation is nothing but a freaking group of individuals that has some boundary that border that we've created around it. And so I say that to say, look at all the amazing ways that you have already seen in your own life true transformation happen. Look at the family members that you know that were once homophobic who are now totally welcoming and accepting. Look at the ways that you used to think a certain group of people was other and you no longer have that belief. In the most simple, and of course, I'm not comparing racism to hairstyles, but I'm just being clear about the science of what it takes for something to transform in your brain, is think about, I remember when I was younger, like in elementary school, people would get kicked out of school for having box braids or cornrows, or people weren't allowed to have red hair or blue hair in school. Now, in 2024, that is totally socially acceptable in most places, not everywhere, obviously. So we've seen a transformation happen. How did it go from box braids, cornrows, and colored hair was considered other to now it is fine for the most part? We see old ladies with purple hair walking around now, right? And so, again, I'm not comparing the severity of hair color and hairstyle to racism. Obviously, racism has a much more severe impact. What I am comparing, because this is based on science, is the way that transformation and transition has happened in our minds is the same process. It's the same process of going, this was other and now it's accepted. We do this as a society, every generation, with many different things. It's time now to do it about racism. It's time.
So powerful, Justin. And again, I think the brilliance of what you and Shelley did is you fill that battery back up with hope.
Oh, thank you.
When we talked about fuel earlier, I truly believe your work is that fuel.
Oh, thank you, Scott.
Yeah. So as a way to sort of land, what are some practices people could even start to actualize to contribute to the end of racism?
Yeah. So I wish that I could, I've now released trying to distill a practice into a couple minutes for people around racism.
Yeah, that's pretty hard.
But what I will, so I'll tell you, read the book, but it's on Audible. Me and Shelley are reading it because it would do it disservice to make you think, try this simple one step that'll take you 5 minutes. Like it would just be a disservice to what's really scientifically proven. But what I will tell you is this: two things. One, an album that I have coming out called Soul Child is a soul music album that is invented. The songs, everything was invented to kind of drop us into our heart space in a way that we can reflect on our journey of transformation throughout our lives. And that reflection that you can do through music will be a part of this album in particular, the sugar that makes the medicine go down for you to believe that you can end racism. So I want to tie in the music piece there.
Yeah.
And so you can look up the Soul Child album. And the second element here is I want you to just spend even a minute, 10 minutes if you're willing, in a meditation practice to imagine a world without racism, without it. And I'm going to say that to you because for most of us, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. We can sometimes imagine a world where it's shifted or a little bit better or it's fixed. But to spend a little time cultivating what that possibility looks like. Because if the future is nothing but a possibility in the present, then if enough of us aren't imagining a future without racism, that possibility never exists for us. And so I just want to invite people, if you don't read the book, if you do nothing, is just to imagine and know that it can. It can. And it's time, and we're ready for this.
Thank you so much, Justin. And for everyone who is listening, please do yourself and the world a favor. Pick up and read the book, How We Ended Racism, Realizing New Possibilities in One Generation by the incredible Justin Michael Williams and Shelley. And you will feel the energy of transformation pulsing through every page. And when your new album's coming out, Soul Child, is it in February? It's like a week away.
February
right?
15th. Yeah, it's in 2 weeks. Yeah. So depending on when this comes out, this will be out already. Yeah.
So go, it will be on Spotify?
Everywhere. Yeah, Spotify, Apple, Tidal, wherever you listen to music, YouTube.
Go everywhere. Get the Soul Child.
No, let it touch your soul. Mm-hmm. Your inner child, though. Your inner child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Justin, where can people find more of you? Where can they connect with you?
The best place to go, honestly, is just to my website, justinmichaelwilliams.com. I have tons of free meditations. I have a free course on helping people break through fear. You can look at the books. You can look at the music. You can get everything at justinmichaelwilliams.com. Or on social media, if you just look me up, Justin Michael Williams. We Just Will is my Instagram. And I'm easy to find. I'm around. And so I'm super grateful to be here. And Scott, you are an absolute gift to the planet. I'm so grateful for the space that you hold. And the fact that we got to have this conversation really means a lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Justin, for being so amazing and inspiring for all of us. And if you haven't yet fallen in love with Justin Michael Williams, just even go listen to some of his music and then re-listen to this podcast, and you most certainly will. Thank you all for listening to The Gently Used Human, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Gently Used Human podcast with Dr. Scott Lyons and friends. Visit gentlyused.com for fun extras, including submitting your questions for advice from a Midwestern mom. And don't forget to spill the tea and gossip about the show with all your friends and frenemies. And you know what? Show us some love by giving us 5 stars and leaving a review in your favorite apps. This helps us connect with all the other gently used humans out there. Oh, and by the way, you look fierce today.